You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, we are going to talk about curiosity in leadership. It's a wonderful idea and a couple of neat things to think about. My guest is a gentleman named Jon Bassford. Jon is now a noted speaker on the subject of curiosity. He's got a book coming out, but we'll get into that later. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So while we were in the green room, I was curious about how you got into curiosity and leadership. So tell the folks what you told me.
Sure. So it was about 10, 12 years ago. I was in a career transition, and I did what most people do is, dust off your LinkedIn and start networking that you haven't done in a while. And I reached out to an old college colleague of mine who connected me with a academic who specialty is helping people define their superpower. And again, I am a curious person and like to do those type of assessments. And this was kind of a little deeper dive, right? It wasn't just your typical online quiz, but working with a real professional, real time. And what he came back with was curiosity as my superpower. I didn't really do much with it at the time. I kind of put it on the shelf. I thought it was neat. But then, fast forward a couple of years, I'm working with a brand consultant on my business and my personal brand. And they do a deep dive in your business and the value you bring to your customers, that sort of thing. And what they came out of that was curiosity, again, being my superpower. And so I really started thinking about that, about my career, my personal life, and how curiosity has played a role. And throughout my career, what I've always done is help organizations improve their operations, launching operations, managing operations. And curiosity has always been a key factor in that, just coming into every situation with a fresh set of eyes and challenging the status quo and, lifting the hood and seeing what's working, what's not working, and questioning what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it that way. And it's really been, again, a hallmark of my career, and also looking back at my personal life and taking on different challenges and opportunities throughout my life, and has really helped me grow as an individual as well.
Fascinating stuff. And I was sharing with Jon that I'm a big fan of that theme. There is a very famous scene out of the now kind of cult classic Ted Lasso where he talks about being curious. And of course, his tagline is "Be curious, not judgmental." But the be curious, I think, is as much part of that message. And by the way, folks, if you haven't seen that, go out to YouTube and look for the "Be Curious" speech from Ted Lasso. You'll love it. It's powerful. And the reason I was really interested in talking to Jon today, again, on this theme of being curious relative to leadership, one of the things I'm sensitive to as I work with business owners and leaders in all walks, there's a real risk of getting set in your ways and getting locked into some project plan, some status quo that is for a season it works well and gets you going, maybe achieve some good things, but then it's not necessarily the right answer long term. And this whole idea of being curious and being ever vigilant, I think, is a really important element. So Jon, talk to us a little bit about kind of how you see this idea manifest when you talk to new clients. How do they apply curiosity into what they're trying to do?
Yeah, for me to kind of adopt a curious leadership style, it kind of requires three shifts. One of them is into growth mindset, right? The belief that we can do more, should be doing more, looking for the possibilities and opportunities that are out there. And also it's a shift to operational excellence. And what I mean by that is, are the things that we are doing on a daily basis driving results as efficiently and effectively as possible, which requires you to constantly look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, to see, is that the best way to get things done. And lastly is creating a curious culture with the people who follow you and work with you. And because you can be great at mindset and have your views on operational excellence, but if you can't bring the team along with you, you're going to hit a ceiling. You're going to only going to go so far, right? And so I'm a big believer in talking about how culture is necessary to drive results, change, innovation, and adopting a curious culture around constant feedback and providing, you know, vertical and horizontal opinions on what's working, what's not working. Everyone in an organization today touches every part some way, right? We're not in a manufacturing line just assembling one part every day, all day long. We all touch each other's, work in what we do, and in allowing that free flow of information, ideas, and questions on a regular basis is what building a curious culture is all about.
I'm as you were describing it, I'm thinking about the one extreme end of the spectrum, the owner founder that is constantly chasing bright shiny obvious objects. He's curious every day, such to the point that the team doesn't have a path forward. They're pinging here, pinging there, doing all this sort of thing. So that's obviously curiosity at its worst. I mean, it kind of borders on the old adage, any strength used in excess becomes a weakness. But how do you see that play out? This notion of being willing and being able to be curious without driving everybody nuts on the team.
Sure. Yeah, a big part of curiosity, as I mentioned about myself, is about being curious about who you are and knowing your strengths and weaknesses. So I think that's a key part to start with is CEOs that tend to chase shiny objects need to have that number two, who is that integrator, that EOS is using, that person who's that staple that operationally can make things happen, and at times say, look, love the idea, we're not
Not
there.
now.
Right, right. I think that's a big part of it. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, sometimes the piece that they bring in the last is someone to oversee operations. And what happens is they either don't have that person that kind of helps control them a little bit, but also doesn't have those people in those inter-operation functions that don't necessarily directly help grow the organization, right? Not in the same way sales and marketing does. And the CEOs, owners get pulled down in that. So like I'm a big believer in having a strong operations team, not just because that's the field I work in, but it's important to make sure your I's are dotted and T's and crossed on the minutia of things, but also having that solid COO that can really help decipher what is feasible, what is right, and what can we do right now.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, on the other end of that spectrum I'm speaking of is that organization that gets set in their ways. They go through some natural evolution of things, and I had an experience in the early days of process improvement. This thing we now know as process improvement kind of became very popular in the early 90s. And I was with an organization who drank some Kool-Aid of a lady who was supposedly a guru in this space. They hired her to come in permanently and work for us. And we launched on this venture to do a top to bottom analysis of the whole enterprise. And we did some great things. I mean, we found 50 something $1 million in operating savings that we could drop straight to the bottom line, and that was all good. But what it proved is that, and by the way, we were already a pretty well run organization. But when we did what we did, and we realized that there was that 50 million in buried opex that was keeping us back from even better returns, we realized that there's an evolutionary aspect of organizations. Just one little tweak here, one little tweak there. Pretty soon it becomes this giant uh, ball of rubber bands that you forgot what's in the middle of it, and you got to peel all that off and get back to the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of thoughts on that. I mean, so I worked for an organization before that when I first stepped into a COO role there, my predecessor had this diagram. drawn on the whiteboard with all the software this organization was using. I mean, it was a spider web, right? There was no strategy behind it. It was like, oh, someone had a flashy, shiny idea over here of something we could utilize. And no one ever thought to look, like, does it work well with our other systems? How are we going to integrate it across everything, right? And so we just created, they built upon wants instead of needs. And I feel like a lot of the systems out there on how to, again, they're all good, right? They're all meaningful, they're all intentional, but they all kind of become a program in and of themselves.
Hmm.
It puts you on a track of thinking one particular way, and like you said, that might serve you well, but eventually you're going to hit a ceiling, and you have to. So the key for me is always is to, follow what you think is best, and if a program is what you want to do, go ahead. But you constantly have to have those mechanisms in place that are constantly questioning what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing it. And it's not questioning for the sake of questioning. It's questioning for, is this the right thing to do? What do we leave on the table? What other opportunities are out there, what other perspectives are out there, and keeping that free flow of ideas going.
Yeah. I think that's so vitally important to kind of keep things fresh. And again, I go back to what I said at the start. There is a natural force that's in the marketplace, and that is the world around us. You build a business, you start something up or buy a business, and you get into it. You start growing it, scaling it, and inevitably you are going to be swayed by what is going on in the market. So the choices you make to adjust, adapt, expand, grow, whatever, have long-reaching effects. I'm reminded of the famous Jimmy Buffett ballad, a permanent reminder of a temporary feeling. And, that's what tattoos are, right? So um, we have to be careful as leaders in programs we adopt, practices we implement, and policies that we stand up, because periodically they need to be looked at. And again, you need to be curious about what really is going on around you and see if there's, in fact, better opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature to, our brains are hardwired for safety, right? To keep us safe. That's evolutionarily that's why they exist and why certain functions exist. And so it's easy to fall into comfort, fall into safety, create habits, let fear keep us from moving forward. And because it's such a natural component for us, we have to create those mechanisms, right? We have to create those times, those places where we're like, okay, we're not here to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's a bad analogy, but it's what came pop in my head real quick. But let's take a look at it. Let's make sure the temperature is still good. Let's make sure that the soap's still good. Let's take a look at what we're doing, right? And you got to create those mechanisms on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, whatever your organization needs, to make sure you're analyzing those and you don't fall into these habitual programs and habits that just keep you where you are.
Is there such a thing, John, as a set of indicators for a company that is really being led by a leader who is properly curious?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple. I think when you see an organization that is truly innovative, they have to be being led by a curious leader. A great example of that is Microsoft's CEO. When he came in, I think what in 2015, he really adopted practices of curiosity, allowing people to question, allowing people to think outside the box. I mean, Steve Jobs did the same thing when he retook over Apple, right? He went through things where he brought in a new executive team. So the organizations that are truly bringing new products to life, looking at new markets, having teams that are allowed to experiment, explore, and even fail, are all key hallmarks of a curious leader.
It's interesting you bring that up. There is some street lore about the story of Amazon, and I think associated with that, there are people that reference that Amazon had this fail fast philosophy. And I interviewed a gentleman that was on that early executive team, and he said, "Nay, nay." He said, "That's not at all what we said." He said, "What we did say was we were willing to move fast, and if things failed, our objective was to learn from that failure." It wasn't, he didn't like the fail fast phraseology because he just suggested they were kind of carelessly trying things and seeing what stuck on the wall. He said, "Not at all. Things were very intentional, but with an innovative business mindset. Clearly, not everything's going to work the way you hope it will. So there will be so-called failures that happen. The real question is, what do you learn from it, and what can you elaborate?" And I had forgotten, but then subsequently learned that the thing we all now know as Alexa sitting on our countertop is really a remnant of Amazon's attempt to enter the mobile phone market. They failed at producing mobile phones, but they found some technology that was voice activated. And hence we've got the whole Alexa world around us now.
Yeah, I've worked with some organizations that think they're being innovative, but they're fast moving, they're hard hitting, they expect results, all those sort of things. But they also have the mantra of, we have one chance to get this right, we can't fail. And that dual attitude actually does anything but create innovative culture. If you can accept some aspect of failure, and even if we're looking at failure from a sense of something didn't work out, but we learned something from it, if you create an atmosphere where failure is not an option at all, you are not going to innovate and grow. You're not going to allow your team to think outside the box and try new ideas. Even looking at Google and 3M's 15 and 20% policy, which they allow their staff 15 and 20% of their time on a side project, not in their day-to-day duties. And that's how we got Post-it notes. That's how we got Gmail, was staff working on projects outside their normal day-to-day duties to think outside the box and try new things. Again, and same with Amazon. Amazon did not set out to build AWS. They wanted to build an internal system for their data.
Right.
And then they
Right.
realized, oh crap, there's a market for this. There's a need for this out there. And now it's one of their biggest revenue streams.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's huge. I think it's north of 50% of their revenue now. Last time I looked, but yeah, you're right. It is it's that relationship with the concept of failing, I think is the key thing from a leadership perspective, because again, nothing is certain, nothing is perfect, and nothing guarantees 100% success. So the ultimate question, in a leadership way, is how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a mindset thing for sure, right? That is going from the growth mindset to the fixed mindset, and making sure that you realize that you're stepping into the unknown. And when you're stepping into the unknown, you don't know exactly what's going to happen, the results are going to be, and you have to be comfortable with that. And you have to relay that to your team. Another thing that Google did a study called Project Aristotle. They're trying to ascertain what amongst teams, dictates results and success. And they had their hypotheses on diversity and all these things. And what they came back was psychological safety. People feeling safe to express ideas, to provide feedback, to push back. And again, that's what we're talking about with this innovative culture is allowing teams to do that, but it's got to be led from the top to create that safety net, right? They have to express they're okay failing, they're okay with you failing, and making sure that the team truly does believe that. And it's not just
Yeah.
words.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that study from Google. The book in my background here, Trusted Work, was a collaboration a partner and I did that came out in parallel with Google's study, and we had already been talking about ways that leaders can create trust in their environment. And we have a slightly different angle on the practical way that leaders can actually promote trust. But the byproduct is this idea of psychological safety. If you're doing it, you're going to create that environment for your workers to be willing to be forthcoming and be curious and be creative, be collaborative, and not fear retribution, judgment, or reprisal for what they say and do. And you're right, that is totally 100% a culture issue, and really nothing more.
Yeah, regardless of your expectations, you can set the metrics, you can set the goals, you can create this environment where you expect people to achieve those. But if you don't create the safety to where people can be innovative, think outside the box, whatever, you're going to create an atmosphere was what they do is learn to just sink back into doing as little as possible. Don't put your head out there on the chopping block. Stay safe. Stay inside your wheelhouse. Don't get noticed and just keep doing your same thing over and over again. That's the best way to keep your job, which is you always the opposite of what these leaders are trying to intend. But if you don't create that safety net, that's what's going to result.
While we're talking about psychological safety, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because it's gold as far as I'm concerned. I was doing a team coaching project for a big global brand, and we had done a team survey assessing kind of where everybody on the team thought about performance of the team. And it was a classic four blocker, and your goal would be to be in the upper right hand quadrant. That's where the good stuff was. And we got the results back of the survey that everybody had participated in, and everybody was kind of clustered up here, but there was one little guy way out over to the left. And before we were going into the download meeting on this, the team leader said to me, he said, "Doug, you're my coach. Is this a problem?" And I said, "No, it's not a problem." He said, "What should I do about it?" I said, "I don't think you do anything." I said, "Let's go into the meeting and let's see what ends up unfolding as we open the discussion." I said, "The last thing you can do is go on a witch hunt and try to figure out who this one person is. That's nay, don't want to do that." So anyway, we did. We went into the meeting, and before we pretty much gave the preamble, this one guy raised his hand. He goes, "I'm the guy," and he said, "I know I'm. This is me on this chart. I've already seen it." But then it got real serious, and he said, "Genuinely, I think I'm an outlier in this group." I said, "Look at the data here. We got this cluster, and then there's me. I'm an outlier." And he said, "I think for the good of the team, I'm going to say right now, I'll resign. I'll go find another job and not leave the company, but I'll find placement elsewhere." And the team quickly rallied around him and said, "Absolutely not. We need you. You are our yin to our yang, and we cannot have you leave us, and we're sorry if you feel somehow dejected or rejected because your ideas never prevail, but please don't take that as something that we need to do." So anyway, we got into a discussion of, well, let's create the culture where we can have this dichotomy of ideas and really honor each other in the process so that we can have the good, curious dialogue about the questions in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing a culture workshop coming up in the next couple of weeks, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about that this organization is facing is different generations. They have a group of people over 55 and a group of people below 30, like nothing in between, and they're challenging with that, right? And again, it kind of different but similar, right? They have two different ways of looking at things. The young and the old, the old generation, new generation, and how do we come together on that? And one of the things I'm going to first do in this workshop is bring everyone together and ask each group to describe something negative that people tend to say about that group. Like bring the defenses down. Then let's have a talk about what the positivity of both groups are. Reverse it. Like I want the young group to talk about positivities of the old group and vice versa, and just have a dialogue. Let's talk about why this exists. And I love talking about the next generation piece because if you look at quotes from Aristotle about the young generation. It's the same stuff we hear today, right? This is not a new problem. It's existed since beginning of mankind. We just have to constantly learn from this that it's not a new problem and just learn how what strengths each team player brings to the table, respect that, allow for the open dialogue in the psychological safety to have these conversations.
You might, I'll just share a thing you might look up. There's there's a preamble in a book that I have read when I've gotten those opportunities to deal with companies that are wrestling with the generational difference. I'll read this thing and I'll say, who wrote this? And everybody will they'll name some names and they'll say, oh, that was probably Mark Zuckerberg, or that was, somebody else, one of the millennial Gen Z thinkers, influencers. I'll go, nope. Henry David Thoreau in 1863. But it reads like, and it's in his book Walden, on Walden Pond. If you'll read that preamble, it sounds like the Millennial Manifesto.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, folks, the bad news is, or good news maybe, depending how you want to look at it, none of this is new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every generation thinks differently about the next generation that's coming up and vice versa. So none of it's new. You just have to come together and have that discussion.
Yeah, one of the examples I bring up when talking about psychological safety is really convincing leaders to get to know their staff, get to know what makes them tick, what makes them excited about waking up in the morning, what makes them excited about coming to work, in reversing instead of this notion that you're here to work and you should just accept that. Reverse people doing 10% what they love and 90% what they hate to 90% what they love and 10% what they're willing to tolerate to have the job. And again, I think a lot of people see this as, oh, this is millennial talk. This is people only want to do what they want to do. They don't want to do the real work. But in the book that Napoleon Hill did with Carnegie, they talked about this concept 125 years ago. And if this is a good enough concept for them in their business genius minds, why is it not good enough for you to getting to know your staff and truly embracing them, not from a superficial at the pizza party, but getting to know them, their motivations, their goals, their dreams, and tapping into that to do so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say pizza party. I had a client recently who was lamenting. She was trying to develop some other leaders in her organization and network, and they were remote work sites, and they were trying to do some programs. And one of the things was, a pizza lunch. And this one leader who was not getting it told her team, well, we're having pizza. We're just going to have cheese because nobody else likes all the toppings, and that's what we're going to do. Well, all of a sudden, all the air went out of the room at that point. And the leader I was coaching said to her, well, why'd you do it that way? Why, if people don't agree on the topping, why don't you agree to order 5 different pizzas? Order 5 different toppings. We got the budget for that. That's the whole point. Spread it around, make it a variety, get everybody involved. If you want to take a survey, how many want pepperoni or anchovies or Hawaiian or whatever, but, figure that out. But don't just say we're only going to have cheese because nobody likes all the toppings. Well, you missed the point.
What was going through my head with that is, yeah, missing the point. But obviously, it made me think back to another Amazon story that I recently read about with Bezos, and he credits success of Bezos to something that happened early on in the company's history. This is back when he was still operating at his garage, and they were all assembling, boxes on their knees on the floor. And he's like, man, he goes, our knees are killing us. We can't sustain this. We need to invest in knee pads. And he contributes the biggest contribution to Amazon's history to a lady who said, no, we need a sorting table. We need to get off our knees. He was focused on the wrong problem. Right. And so, like, again, being curious about what exists, why it exists, why are we doing something, and make sure we're focused on the right things that are truly going to move the needle the way we want and not just put a little band-aid over something.
Right, right. Well, Jon, real quick before we have to get off here, talk to us about the book you're working on.
Sure. So this is talks about a lot of things I talked about in on this episode. Thinking back to my journey with curiosity and wrapping my head about that in my life and my career and talking about the need uh, for leaders to adopt curiosity, to break habits, to break the mundane and the status quo, and really think outside the box and truly grow and innovate. So the goal for this is really to inspire entrepreneurial leaders who, whether you're working for a nonprofit, a startup, or small business, whatever it is, but the people who want to truly make a bigger impact and grow their organization, grow their business, and give them a pathway to do that. Again, I'm hoping that this is going to be released probably early 2025. We're in the editorial stage at this point, but certainly you can check out my website, jonbassford.com, Jon Bassford, Bassford, and stay up to date on when that's going to be released.
Perfect. Well, that's great, Jon. Well, thank you for sitting in and sharing this with us. And I certainly want to challenge everybody to think about your level of curiosity in the work you're doing. Have you lost that edge, or is it a thing you need to go get some help with? It's great fuel for really propelling your organization forward. So again, Jon, thank you for coming in, sitting in with us.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, with that, folks, I do want to remind you we've got a video version of this show over on YouTube, channel by the same name. Hop over there, check out the archive, leave me a comment. I always am willing to take the thumbs up, thumbs down, whichever you choose. Just let me know. But for now, we are going to sign off, say goodbye, go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.